Years ago, I read that offering the peasants more money didn't get more work out of them because they'd rather own their own time. And so they created the Protestant ethic and made all of this labor for the Lord worthy of your entrance to heaven. So it was what I heard called the pay now, fly later plan. So let me see. You brought up so many things, and I meant to bring up a pad so I could make note of what I wanted to respond to, all of it. But let me go within and see where. So a lot of people, when they hear that life sentence, the first question is, who did this to us? And certainly there are elements that were done to us, and we are witnessing the constant manipulation of language to try and make things to reverse reality. And so that happens, but I think as I have a little addendum to that life sentence when you look for it on YouTube, and it goes that words are electromagnetic vibrations whose fine alphabetic tintinnabulations can take on the tint of our true expectations, which they then imprint on our metal of mind, causing sounds to adhere when they're of the same kind. So I think some is just an electropoetic gravitational slide into the same vibration. And we have been so trained to look at what does a word mean without looking at what does the word mean. And it means stingy, shabby, cruel, and average, among other things. So the other way we can say, well, if I don't want to say what does it mean, well, what's its definition? Well, we have been deafened to definitions because we use the word sound to mean integrity, strength, validity, and solidity, but act as if word sounds had no such validity. So we are clearly not of sound mind because we are deaf to the multiple vibrations in a single sound. We've looked at synonyms, which are words that are very different in sound and possibly origin, but mean essentially the same thing. But rarely do we look at homonyms. Homonym, homonym, same name. So these are words that seem completely unrelated, yet share the same sound. Now, why would that be? Well, it's dismissed as a coincidence, and as we discussed last time, that means a coincidence. Well, what magnetic force caused these two disparate elements to coincide? We have used coincidence to mean insignificance, but hardly is that true. And I like to point out that we are oblivious to the obvious. Sherlock Holmes pointed it out. He said the world is filled with obvious things which nobody happens to notice. And so it's very good to begin to notice what sounds are riding on what meanings are riding on a sound, and why it is. I mean, we were, what can I say, censored for suggesting that the Wuhan lab of virology could have been the origin of COVID-19. I mean, ignore the obvious. Don't look there. Excuse me. So, English words emerge at the convergence of consciousness and culture. So you have some words that reflect the culture that was dominant when English was in formation, like from multiple streams of consciousness coming into one body of communication called English, but evidently sounding very different depending on what shire you came from, because of all the conquerors of this little island and all those people that were conquered by the seafaring people from England. So many, many languages. And I learned once that the first English printer, I think in the 16th century or 15th, William Caxton, said that speakers of English are as if living under the domination of the moon. And what he evidently meant was because it was so malleable and so different from one place to the next. But all of us, in a certain sense, are living under the domination of the moon. Its electromagnetic pull on the tides and on the tides of our own body affect us all. So I believe, because this language is the global language, and it is filled with these symbols and sounds that are conveying all sorts of messages that mostly escape our notice, and that we can look upon it as software and the leading software of the Western mind, and collectively, creatively upgrade it to a freer frequency, and thereby turn the tide on the global sea of consciousness, S-E-E. If you look at the word word, and you simply add the letter L, and the sound of which is an abbreviated form of God in Hebrew, you see that the word creates the world. And we have the power of the word on the tips of our tongue and fingers. And we can get very creative. We can open to those freer frequencies with the intention of being gifted with semantic revelations in which we find, which we recognize the messages in words, and we contribute new words that can inspire higher consciousness.